Hello, thank you so much for being part of Joyasonyelive this beautiful day. It promises to be very interesting as we're just coming out of the weekend and so much is going on. On the program today, we'll be talking about the Niger coup and the Ecowas threat. The neighbors and the international community have continued to condemn the coup that happened a week ago in Niger that ousted President Mohamed Bazoum by General Abdurrahman Tiani, I hope I got that right, who declared himself new head of state. The Economic Community of West African States, that's the Ecowas, and the African Union have also threatened several sanctions, including military action. So far, we've had about 6 African countries being headed by military. How strong is the Ecowas or these regional blocs to influence what these sovereign states eventually want for themselves? In a twist, we are seeing pro-coup protesters. What is it for Africa? Well, that's what we're discussing today. And in the studio with us is a security expert, Mr. Steve Okori. He's the head Stick Mirac Security Consulting and also a security, safety and crime management consultant. It's fantastic to have you join us. You are our security. It's almost like when we're waiting for any trending security story to happen and we call on you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Exactly. So we'll go for a short break now and return to go into the story. Would this ECOWAS threat and the AU sanctions rather really have an influence? Stay with us, we'll find out. Welcome back from that short break. Like I said earlier, we have the MD Stick Mirac Security Consulting. He's also a security, safety and crime management consultant, Mr. Steve Okori, who doctor in waiting really. You'll be doctor in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. By the grace of God.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to be referring to you as doctor. Welcome to the studio, though.
Yeah.
Now let's go to our neighbor Niger. Yes. Before we would explore very many aspects of this story, this trending story here. But first of all, ECOWAS has given an ultimatum, a threat, so to speak, and it's
7 days.
Yeah, exactly, a threat where they're expecting the military junta, the military to obey and restore President Bazoum. Yes, Bazoum. Is that even possible? Can the ECOWAS still bite?
Yeah, thank you for having me on your show. The incident in Niger, if you ask me, did not come to me as a surprise. Reasons because Niger borders countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, and the likes. And of course, you agree with me that currently you have a military heading the government in Mali and also heading the government in Burkina Faso. Niger, they've been trying to see how to sustain their democracy, but they've been this intervention by the military intervening in their democratically elected government. They first had the intervention in 1974. From 74, they also had another coup in 1996. There was also another coup in 1999. Then in 2014, there was also another coup. Then 2023, you still have another one. You know, so
they've always been prone to this.
Yes, that's why I said it didn't come to me as a surprise at all. For the ECOWAS, we're lucky that we have a president, our own president, President Bola, Ahmed, Tinubu, chairing the ECOWAS
at the moment.
Yes, and I want to commend him for swiftly condemning the action and reconvening an ECOWAS meeting here in Abuja, where presidents of the West African states countries were also in attendance, and this decision about restoring the democratically elected government of Niger, or they will now begin to face some sanctions, Sanctions like there will be suspension, they will be suspended from the ECOWAS and African Union Commission. And all this suspension, of course, you agree with me that it comes with some consequences,
It does?
Yes, it comes with some, yeah. It does.
Trade related?
Trade related. Even some financial and technical assistance, even in the area of humanitarian aid.
Support, yes.
So all these, they will be cut off. And don't forget that the UN record has it that about 4.3 Niger citizens, primarily women and children, depend solely on humanitarian aid. So once this is cut off, so just imagine what will happen to this large population of Nigerians that are benefiting from this humanitarian aid. So I think that the military, they're not looking into all that, but it would be nice for them to look into that, because if they are taking over power for the interests of the citizens of Niger, they should consider all these that will boomerang at the end of the day. So at this point, I can only advise from this end that the military should listen to what the ECOWAS government or commission is saying, hand over power back to the ousted president.
Now, we've seen this over and over. You seem very optimistic that this president, who doubles as the ECOWAS chair, is going to do something different. Usually when there's a coup like this, we would hear that ECOWAS has condemned it, ECOWAS has threatened sanctions, and then they're asking for the release of the president, who probably is being held captive, and then the president will be released, and the ECOWAS will come for negotiations, and eventually you see nothing, and military takes over. We have 6 states. African states headed by the military as we speak. So what would you, apart from these sanctions, and we have also had that's a refutal from the military head. He has declared himself head of state. Now he's also threatening that ECOWAS go ahead with the threats that they have lined out. It's going to be bloody, so to speak. Now, what would you expect that ECOWAS can do, the AU can do, that will be more, that will push them more? I mean, I don't want to use very strong words. I don't know the proper security words for it. But in my layman terms, what else can be done apart from the sanctions? Yeah,
apart from the sanctions, there's already a duration, which is 7 days.
7 days.
We have to see that the 7 days is exhausted. Then we begin to look at other measures to go about it. Don't forget that our former president, Goodluck Jonathan, has been mediating in the Mali issue too, trying to see that democracy is restored back to Mali. So you see former President Jonathan always going into Mali and coming back, even before former President Buhari left office. You see that he kept coming to brief President Buhari of the outcome of his mediation over there in Mali. Very recently, he was also in the villa to see President Tinubu to brief him how far they are going about
the negotiation.
Try to see how to restore peace and return democracy back in Mali. So let's see how it goes. But if the current military head in Niger decides to do otherwise, it will be bloody if the ECOWAS wants to go the way they are thinking, because they are thinking that they are going to deploy military intervention and all that. At the end of the day, if it becomes war, the effect that comes with war. Countries that border Niger, like Nigeria, for instance, there will be refugees, people running out of their countries coming into Nigeria. And of course, that as they are coming into Nigeria as a result of the war, don't forget that miscreants and criminal elements are also coming in. And there will be proliferation of arms and ammunition, and it also comes
especially with the very porous borders.
Exactly, So all that, we'll begin to see all that. And also in the area of epidemic, you don't know what they have there. As they come into our country,
We are more exposed to whatever they bring.
Exactly.
Wow.
So all these are the issues. So let us see how it goes. Let them see how they exhaust the 7 days, and whatever they begin to think out. The international communities like the United States, Russia, and France, and the likes, they also condemned the coup.
Exactly.
You know, even the UN, United Nations, also condemned the coup. You know, so with all this, for instance, even France, they've cut off humanitarian and financial aid.
That's interesting.
You know, so of what benefit is the coup? That's the point. When the country stands to lose so much, you know. So I think the military, the head, should have a rethink, if you ask me.
Okay, before we come to what the pulse in Nigeria at the moment, were you surprised that you saw citizens in support of this coup?
Yes.
Because I mean, I saw them in their numbers, yes, even attacking civilians, the politicians, exactly, burning their vehicles and properties.
But what do you expect? In any society, you must see certain people that will go the other way, you know. And this thing is an eye-opener for us in the African continent, where the dividends of democracy, it's not cascading. Exactly. They need to see that they provide dividends of democracy, you know, for the people, for the citizens. If they treat the people well, why should there be a protest in support of the military?
But do they understand, like you just mentioned, the many disadvantages of having the coup in the country?
They are not aware. They are not aware. So these are some illiterates that are doing this, because if they are really aware that they are going to lose a lot of benefits because it has changed from a democratically elected government to a military junta, they won't be doing that. You know, I just told you about 4.3 million of their citizens that are...
Who depend solely on humanitarian aid.
You know. So it's very possible that some of the people that are even celebrating are also benefiting from this humanitarian aid. So imagine that aid is cut off.
Like it has been threatened to be cut off.
Yes. Like France and the likes, they've already cut it off. You know. So, and there are also some other things like when it comes to regional decision making, you know, within the countries. Niger will not be part of it. They'll be part of it because they've been suspended from Ecowas and also from AU. So there are some benefits and assistance that comes, you know, when you have a civilian democracy. But in this instance, I think that that's the way I said initially, that they need to sit down and think well. It's not by taking over power.
Right. Yeah. And now it's the influence now that I want us to focus on. I mean, the AU, France is already saying that if you attack investment, French investment there, they would have consequences and all this threat. Yes. Is it enough? And why are we seeing more in France? We also saw the Sudan, Burkina Faso was recently as well, and all of that. It seems like all attention is on France, on Niger.
Yeah, I want to believe that France colonized Niger. So that's why they have so much vested interest in what we're talking about here. Don't forget that France embassy has been attacked.
It has?
Yes, it has been attacked over there in Niger. So, yes, so all these are the issues because France is already responding and taking actions and all, and the citizens are not happy with their decision. You know, this is an international issue. The UN in 2021, through the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, said that globally, from between 2017 and 2023, we have experienced about 17 coups, and just one is outside the African continent. The one that is outside the African continent is in Myanmar or so. So we've had 16 coups between 2017 and 2023, you know, within the African continent. So it goes to show there is a trend, you know, that's already brewing, you know, is brewing, and it's important, or it's high time that African leaders try to see how to nip it in the bud. Because if they allow it to continue the way it's going to envelope the African continent.
Now, how can you allow it the way it's going? I mean, when the citizens are the ones who are supporting, and it reminds me of how some of these African leaders emerge leaders. Some of the processes, there's even this democracy we are talking about, the processes at which they came into power is questionable.
Yeah, you see, these are the issues. The way Amana they come to power, and the way Amana they glue to power. They don't want to vacate when it's time for them to vacate. You know, so all these are issues that breeds what we are talking about here. You don't expect an African leader to be in power for 20, 25, 30 years. What are you doing? The people will get tired of you.
Of course.
You know, so I think that remaining in power and want to continuously remain in power is also an issue. You know, and I think one of the issues that affected the ousted Niger president was because he continued with the head of the presidential guard that served the previous
administration.
Yeah, and that is why once you come in like that, you try and see how to bring in on board people that you think are loyal to you, and also loyal to the government of the state. You know, and of course you take a clue from what our president did. The moment he came,
the first thing was change the
service chiefs, which of course is the right thing to do. So for not doing what he did in Niger, it's also the thing has affected him. So some of these changes that we'll see by leaders, I think it's necessary and is the right direction for them to keep the government they want to head. And just the way we talked about the way Amana they emerge is also a challenge. A lot of people are agreed. Forget that this military in all these countries are not partisan, but don't forget that they are also human beings. You know, in their subconscious, they feel that this is the person that should be president, and the person is not there. So they want to do one thing or the other to see how to topple the government. But once you have the military as the commander-in-chief, and you take charge, you won't see what we are saying today.
Now, do you get surprised when you also listen to Nigerians and they say maybe the military should take over? Does it also question what democracy really means to us? Is it indigenous to the African continent? You just mentioned 16 coups in the African continent between 2017 and 2023. Yes. That is really concerning. Maybe this democracy isn't for us.
If democracy is not for us, then is it monarchical kind of government that you want us to practice? That's the way it is practiced in Morocco. You know, this system of government, this democracy, of course, you know that is borrowed. You know, for Nigeria, for instance, we borrow this system of government from the US. You know, and the Nigerian people or the people in leadership position will tell us that it's a nascent democracy, and we're still learning the process. And all that, but I don't know how long we'll keep learning the process.
We are babies until the very end.
But the babies must grow.
These babies are not growing. They are still crawling. You know, in fact, we are celebrating the smallest feat in Nigeria. And they tell you, well, our democracy is not strong enough, and that's why you see the lapses and flaws that you still see in our governance structure. But do Africans understand that they can hold government accountable? And they can, if my father will always say, if the people raise their heads, the table will turn. Do they know that? Because if they do, they would ensure that this dividends of democracy cascades to them.
I think in the African continent, we are beginning to become aware, you know, because there's this domineering tendencies from our leaders, you know, trying to see that you don't speak against the government that they had, you know, trying to see how to gag or cage opposition. But I think the awareness is becoming overwhelming. When you watch television, on radios and all that, you see that Nigerians are free, very free to express
themselves.
Their
That's
views.
For sure.
Yes, express their views, either in support or against, you know. So I am happy about that awareness. And if not for democracy, they will be able to talk like that. Of course, you know that in Nigeria at the moment, The constitution has been suspended.
Of course.
There's no freedom of speech or freedom of association and all that anymore. All that has been taken off.
And yet people are celebrating this.
That's why I said they're ignorant of what they are doing. They're ignorant. They're ignorant of. If they know what they are celebrating, they won't be celebrating. Because there's a lot that comes with having a democracy kind of government. You know, of course, there's this axiom that says that the best military regime cannot be compared to the worst civilian. So these human rights, you know, the right to live, the right to associate, the right to speak freely, you know, and all that, it doesn't come with when you have a military rule, you know. So these are the issues or the elements that why they say the best axiom, the axiom that the best military rule is worse than the best
civilian rule.
So that's it. So they cannot enjoy that in Nigeria anymore. I don't know if that video is real, where in Nigeria the Minister of Finance
was crying,
was being asked that he should give an account of how the expenditures and all that was done, and if he doesn't do, he will be shot or something. I don't know how true that is.
I don't know how true that is as well.
But we saw him crying all through, you know. So you don't see that, you won't see that during the civilian government.
But what of those who say maybe that is what we deserve? Maybe that is that kind of stronghold that we deserve, so that whatever, you know the processes that comes with a civilian rule or a democratic rule.
Exactly.
Maybe Africans rather are no longer that patient.
But it's the situation that we have found
ourselves. But let's go to the fact that we're also seeing some protesters brandishing the Russian flag. Is there a monkey hand in this pot?
There could be. It's possible that there's a conspiracy somewhere. It's very possible, very likely, but I have not done my research in that regard to see how to unfold what the content is, you know. But there's a possibility that there could be a conspiracy.
In the papers today, the military junta was asking Russia for help as well. So it goes to ask those questions.
No, Russia has a civilian, democratically elected government. Putin, the fact that he goes off or he goes out after a while, he comes back, and it's still democracy.
It's still democracy.
So if you have democracy in Russia, then why are you going to support a military coup or military junta in somewhere in Africa? It doesn't make any sense, you know. So I think that the international community is also looking at that. If Russia goes the other way against what the other nations are agreeing with or agreeing to.
Okay, but I mean, Russia, if there's any country that has suffered or been at the other end of receiving sanctions and all of that, is Russia.
Yes.
And yet they still stand tall.
Yeah, they still stand tall.
So if these humanitarian aids are being cut off from every other person but Russia, do you think the junta would succeed?
Russia cannot do it alone, you know, in supporting a country. If Russia is standing tall, why didn't Putin go to the BRICS summit in South Africa? He's also scared. He knew that if he goes to South Africa for that BRICS summit, there's a likelihood that he will be arrested.
Maybe, you know? But he's also lending a hand, agreeing to provide aid to Africa in terms of grains and agricultural products.
Yes, it's part of the treaties that or international bilateral relationship that some African countries also share with countries like Russia. You know, every country has bilateral relationship with other countries.
Of course, but the question now, I just want you to hit the nail on the head. Are they using Africa to play international politics? Okay, maybe that's too direct.
I should say yes or no?
I don't know what you should say. Do you believe that Africa is being used to play international politics?
Yes, I believe and I agree with that. We see it play out. Do you know why? Because we are still, African continent is still dependent. You think we are independent? We are not. We are not independent. So when you say a country that you depend on so largely that there are some benefits that you get from that country, you allow the politics to fly.
That's a wonderful time to go for a short break. We're still discussing the Niger situation and the Ecowas threats We'll be right back after this. This is still Joyasonyelive. Welcome back from that break. This is still Joyasonyelive here on Kaftan, where we've been discussing the Niger coup and Ecowas threat and how influential Ecowas and the AU and other international blocs that are condemning this military junta, what they can do. We had discussed so much, but let's talk about this regional decision-making body. As I still have the MD, Stick Mirac Consulting, Steve Okori. It's quite interesting, you know, what is playing out. And I had asked what Nigeria stands to lose, you know, in having this crisis so close to them. You had mentioned very in passing, really. But is there a way Nigeria can actually protect itself? I mean, economic-wise, and just in case this overblows out of proportion, protect its borders? We know it's porous, but is there a way?
I think at this point we should see how to be proactive, you know, because there's something on ground. Right. Yes. That's the way you said. We shouldn't wait. Yes, we shouldn't wait until it blows out of proportion. Then it gets to a stage where we're unable to manage it. I think that at this point, certain measures, you know, should be on ground, you know, around the borders between Nigeria and Niger. You know, both men on the ground, you know, the use of technology and the likes should be, you know, on ground at the moment, because the next how many days the threat or the condition that ECOWAS gave the general will be over. Once it's over, what's the next step? Are they going to deploy military? That's number one. Or are they going to change tactics or strategy? Or say, okay, we won't deploy force. Let us see how to come in through a soft way or manner by, okay, let us go into dialogue or discussion with the head of the military junta. Why did they take over? What's the reason? They should begin to look at all that. Okay, how do we now come to an agreement? You know, because the military cannot remain there for as long as they want. They must definitely return to a democratically elected government. Exactly. If it's there's a possibility that the ousted president might not return. It might be a condition. They will now say, okay, we want to stay for a period, let's say 8 months or 1 year. At the end of a period, when there's some kind of stability in the country, they will now ask for a new election that will bring in another president on board. So there's a possibility that this president might not return. But if ECOWAS insists that the president will return or should be returned, it depends on what the military wants to bring to the table. So all that, I want to leave it for them at that level to see where I'm going to go about it. Then back home, that's the way I said, we don't know the outcome of all this. Nigerian government should begin to see that the necessary modalities are put in place for the possibility of what we don't know. In the event where it results to war, we shouldn't be taken unawares, you know. But what would you say if you have to advise the security chiefs now to put in place? Because like we have just alluded, our borders are very porous. I'm trying to look for an adjective that describes how porous it is. Somebody was talking about how we have over 1,000 footpaths into and outside the country. So that's how porous our borders are. It's what can be done, really? It's for the government. Because first of all, before you even respond, we already have an influx of very many Nigerians in Nigeria at the moment. And we can't even account for them because of the similarity in look and the language and even the ethnicity. Yes, I agree with you. Now we have identified that there are a lot of borders, the ones that are recognized and the ones that are not recognized. Now, it's for the government, the relevant agencies of government, you know, to see how to begin to identify the ones that are not recognized and begin to see how to take care of that. Constant border patrol, you know, border patrol with the use of technology, not just, you know, constant border patrol is very key in this regard, you know. And certain things should not be taken for granted, you know. Negligence of duty, you know, all these counts. In the event where you just have this carefree attitude, you know, it's not possible for a Nigerian to come and begin to pass at this particular point in time. All that should not be taken for granted, you know. You know, in the area where they succeed, they shouldn't relax. I expect that they should continue to build more and see how to close the gap in their, as they carry out their duties. You know, so constant border patrol, you know, and you know, we have this challenge of means of identification. Exactly. How far is the NIM going? How is it working? You know, there's a lot of Nigerians that don't even have this name. I know. So in the event where that name would have been so wonderful, because I don't know if it's still done. Many years ago when I did mine, that we're talking about 7 years ago when I did mine, I was asked who my father was, and they connected it immediately. I was asked who my siblings are, and they connected to my siblings who had already registered at the time. So I found, I applauded it. I remember coming on air to talk about how wonderful the whole process was. But I don't know if they go through that any longer. Because, I mean... You know, we have this attitude of not keeping to standard. The way Amanda they started, of course, it dwindles. I mean, I saw that firsthand with what happened with the INEC registration. So it dwindles, you know. So we don't keep or maintain, rather than seeing how to either maintain or step it up. We usually go down. Why that attitude? You know, so a lot of things comes with all this, and it shows the commitment of people that are saddled with this responsibility of issuing such a means of identification. You know, now is a challenge. So just supposing that, or imagine that a lot of Nigerians, especially up north, people that live around the borders, if they have this name, it won't be a challenge. If they see you, you identify yourself. It's just for what do you call this agency, the Nigerian National Orientation Agency, you know, set the publicity rolling. Let the people know around that lives around the border, right? You know, the Nigerian border to Niger now. Let them know that as they move from one point to another, they should ensure that they carry their means of identification. NIM. I'm not talking about voters card, because even foreigners in Nigeria, especially from Niger, also have the voters card. You know, but I think for NIM, it was properly scrutinized, at least to avoid foreigners having it. That if they did the proper thing. So let us give them that benefit of a doubt that they did the proper thing, and it is only Nigerians that have NIM and they move about with their card. In the event where they see somebody trying to cross and the person identifies he or herself, you let the person go. But in the event where you don't have, it's assumed that you are from Niger, you have to go back. Right. So Nigeria is already faced with security challenges. Apart from the infrastructural stretch that may happen should there be an influx of Nigerians, what's the biggest security threat to Nigeria? You know, during my PhD, I did a research on... That's interesting. I like the way you added that. You've not finished the PhD. Stop rubbing it in. But please go ahead. I did my research on kidnapping for ransom. And I interacted with quite a number of victims. And from what they told me, they said some of these kidnappers don't even speak Nigerian languages. I tried to probe further, you know, if they profiled them to see. They were giving me some features of people that come from Niger. So we have this collaboration between foreigners and our domestic criminals when they collaborate to carry out these illicit activities, you know. So these are one of the issues. In the event where there is trouble or war, we should expect that there will be increase in crime. Definitely. Because they are coming into a country where they don't have where to put their heads. they don't have a means of livelihood in Nigeria. So how do you expect them to take care of their wants and their needs? They will definitely go into crime to see that they make money to take care of themselves. So crime will be on the increase. And don't forget that it will also affect our food security. In the event where farmers are unable to go to farm around Katsina and the other states that borders, what do you expect? So all these are issues that will definitely spring up. And of course, you know that it will increase the population of Nigeria. Nigeria will try to see how to...
You mean the data that we're not even sure of at the moment?
we also have to do a mental calculation that the thing has increased from 206 million to possibly, we don't know the number, And of course, you know that we don't keep these records here. The number of persons that will come in, how will you know the number? When there's no... My dear, there's a lot that the government needs to do.
You're right.
Yeah, seriously.
So what can Nigeria teach other African countries? We seem to have our democracy stable in spite of economic challenges and security challenges, which, by the way, was one of the reasons that the military junta in Niger mentioned as the reason to take over power.
Nigeria is the giant of Africa, right? We are giant in everything. And from 1999 to now, I think this is the longest democracy that we have had. I see that part of the reasons why we have been able to sustain or keep our democracy is the government of the day, even before this current government, they try to see that they have this robust, relationship between the government and the military.
Okay.
Yes, if you ask me. Because in the event where you don't take care of them in their remuneration, their allowances and all that, by providing what you know that they really need, and they get angry, what do you expect? It's something like what happened in Nigeria that you...
So is it a case of take care of us or take care of the citizenry?
It's all encompassing. It cuts across, takes care of us and also take care of the citizens. But you have to see that you actually take care of them. Provide what you think they need, because they are defending our territorial boundaries. And they're also taking care or taking charge of certain insecurity issues in this country that are the responsibility of the police. So you can see that they are also overwhelmed with the issues. You have to make them happy. Boost their morale. You have to motivate them. So that
with all the complaints we are hearing, I'm surprised you are saying here that they are being cared for well enough.
No, you asked me a question that with Nigeria and all that, with the queue that we are seeing, what do I think the government should do that we don't experience what other African countries
No,
experience?
that's not how I phrased it. I intentionally phrased it in a different way. My question was directed at, we seem to have gotten it right.
Yes.
We seem to have embraced this democracy.
Exactly.
And I'm saying that, what are we doing right? And you're mentioning, it seems,
I'm mentioning what I think that the government is doing.
And I'm saying that if indeed what you're saying is correct, why then do we see soldiers? They are complaining about remuneration, we are complaining about allowances, and not to mention compensations when they are injured, or even pay the ultimate price.
Yes. You see, on that you won't blame the government. The government provides all that. So maybe
the management.
The management. You look at the military hierarchy. Are they really carrying out the provision that the government has done or provided? Because I know in the event where they pay the supreme price, their families are being given some large sum of money.
Should be given some large sum of money.
Yes, we see. And in the event where they got injured in the line of duty, we have seen where the chief of army staff, the chief of air staff, both previous and present, visit them in the hospitals where they are being taken care of, So they are not abandoned completely. They are being taken care of at each point of their, where they perform their duties, So with that and some other things that we are seeing, I think that there's a smooth working relationship
and synergy with...
yes. Like today, the president hung the ranks of the new service chiefs.
Exactly.
So the chief of army staff is now a lieutenant general, the chief of defense staff is now a 4-star general, and the other service chiefs, you know. With that, you see that there's a cordiality. There's a cordiality,
but people are asking, should President Tinubu be weary?
Certainly, he should. Don't forget that I said during one of my comments here that Niger borders Mali and
exactly.
Burkina Faso, and Niger borders Nigeria as well. You know, so it's a trend.
So is there before you go there, is there a collaboration between these armies? Are they talking to each other, or just watching to say, oh, if this can work here, I'm sure it can work here too?
Before they are army or before they are soldiers, don't forget that they are human beings.
Of course.
So these thoughts can trickle in, you know. So you can't take that away.
So if President Tinubu should be weary,
yes,
what steps should he take? Pacify them even more?
Make them happy.
Not the citizenry again, you insist?
No, if the people that are fighting for our interests, if you don't make them happy, they won't be happy doing the job. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Yes.
I do not understand, because if you feed me and you're not feeding my brothers, if you're not feeding my sisters, and it is indeed exacerbating the poverty and security challenges, poverty and security seem to go hand in hand, I would be worried.
Yes, but they are constitutionally saddled with the responsibility of protecting the state and also the citizens. And they are entitled to their entitlements.
Of course.
Yeah, certainly you have to make that provision. So in making that provision, you have to make them happy so that they will be committed in carrying out the task.
Okay. Now, before I let you go, what do you think of Abdurrahman Chiani's body language? I mean, when the Ecowas released the many conditions, he seemed to back right back.
Yes. You know, first of all, you can't take that the soldier, you know,
that ego that comes with the profession, right?
You can't take that away. So you expect him to back. You don't expect him to back out like a chicken, you know. So he wants to play that egocentric attitude or behavior of a soldier, you know.
And at the same vein, we have a President Tinubu who the world is looking at. We've not seen an Ecowas that bites as it backs.
Yes.
So how do you manage this? Because if in 7 days, I'm not sure what will happen. If the Ecowas does not go ahead with the military action that they threatened, what does he say?
This is a collective. The fact that President Tinubu is chairing the Ecowas, this decision is not entirely his.
It's not. But
yes. So he must talk. The outcome of this very decision that they give them 7-8 days quit notice, and that they should restore the ousted government. It was a collective decision of the West African states.
Of course.
You know. So going forward, if they exhaust the timeline, they will have to come back to another meeting. You know.
Right.
What's the next step? Do we still go ahead with the deployment of military?
Or recent development has proven we should do otherwise.
Exactly. So they will still come back to this.
I seem to know the language that these people use, but would it still have that influence that ECOWAS we've been looking at recently?
Yes. You know, a lot of considerations will come on the table. If they begin to deploy military, for instance, innocent lives
will be in the crossfire.
What will ECOWAS stand to benefit when Nigerians are being killed as a result of the war between ECOWAS countries and the Niger military? You know, so all that will be taken into consideration. And you know, war is not in any way a better means to an end. You know, so I think at some point they will try to see how to maybe shift a bit, and that's okay. Let us go the other way.
Do you think 7 days was too short, an ultimatum? Maybe they should have given the junta more time to realize they made a mistake if the international community is cutting ties.
I think they don't want to give them the opportunity for them to settle. By the time they sit on that seat and they begin to enjoy the benefits that comes with it, they won't want to go on time. So I think these are the issues that they have considered. Let us see how to hurry them out, you know. But for now, I don't want to say that the military deployment will be the best way. The fact that they deployed military during the Gambian time, don't forget that Ajame was retired.
Retired at the time.
So it was a civilian government that was refusing to hand over to another civilian government after losing his election.
Yes.
So
that's different.
Of course, it's different. So the moment Nigeria and other West African countries started deploying warships and the likes to Gambia, the man had to surrender and find his way out. But in this case, you are seeing the military. You don't know how committed the other services are in this. Well, they also have the Air Force and the other services there
of
too
course,
as well.
that's
so how are they really working together, or there's some certain form of disagreement? So if they are not working together, the Ecowas can say how to break through. But if they are working together, then it will be a difficult one.
Well, Steve Okori, we see how it goes, and I'm hoping that we indeed have this clarity. Everybody is rooting for democracy. It's the best form of governance. I hope that this military junta understand it and return it, especially with the president still in captivity. But before I let you go, what do you think would happen to the president? Do you think he's safe? Do you think they would dare attack his life?
No. They won't do that because they know the implication.
What is the implication?
The implication of taking the life of the president? The implication? It will not just be this deployment of military to the country. It will be a different thing entirely. As far as the ECOWAS government and international community are concerned, the man is still president.
Right.
You know, so they know the implication. The highest they will do is just to keep him in captivity and be feeding him and his family.
Wow, that's a sad one, going from president to a captive. But this is where, unfortunately, really, this is where we draw the curtains on Joyasonyelive. We've been discussing with Mr. Steve Okori. He's a doctor in waiting, I must add. He's the MD Stick Mirac Security Consulting and a Security Safety and Crime Management Consultant. Again, I thank you for being part of the program and giving clarity to what's going on in Niger.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Having said that, do have a wonderful evening and be rest assured we'll be back here tomorrow with so much more. Have a wonderful evening.